Welcome to a new episode of the Cartridge Club, where we discuss our game of the month with members of the Cartridge Club community. If you played along, you can always share your own experiences in our community's Discord or across social media by using the hashtag PlayAlongWithCrime. My name is James, or social media handle RetroPixel. In May 2023, we collectively played River City Girls. The game follows Masako, whom is in detention at River City High, accompanied by her best friend, Kyoko. She receives a text message containing photo of Kunio and Ricky, the heroes of River City High, and their boyfriends, seemingly being captured or kidnapped. Joining me on the show, we have the community members Church and Stumptownretro to discuss the adventure of saving our boyfriends in this RPG element beat-em-up adventure, released in 2019, developed by WayForward and published by Arc System Works. It is a spin-off in the Kunio-kun franchise. The game stars Masako and Kyoko, who fight their way through enemies and obstacles to rescue their kidnapped boyfriends, series protagonists Kunio and Ricky. Alrighty, so basically what I will do is lead it off to Church for the first port here that I have set up, which is the your opinion on picking up the combat style.
Yeah, so when you mean picking up combat style, is you're just referring to like how the game
because it's a little bit different
character?
than your typical beat 'em up where it's just
Oh, yeah.
punch, kick, jump, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that is one of the things I absolutely loved about this game is the diversity of the combat. I mean, I'm assuming we all love beat 'em ups, but yeah, they can be very, very basic with just your punch and kick. This I love the combo system, the grapples, the special moves, that you can purchase more of those as you get cash through just playing the game. I am a very exclusively team Masako myself. I like just the like brute force that she has, and it works well. Even though I mean they essentially play the same, but I know that they just have some slightly different styles visually. But I love it. Like, I mean, that's all I can say.
Oh, perfect. All right, and I will lead into Stump as well. What you kind of felt with your first impressions jumping in on it?
It was honestly second nature for me because I can see a lot of the DNA of this game. Obviously, it comes from the previous games in the Kunio-kun series, but it gets a lot from Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which has a very similar upgrade system with special moves and things like that. It does have a dojo where you can learn new moves as well, but they don't call it dojo in Scott Pilgrim. But it was very easy for me to pick up and get right back into this. This is actually my second time playing through the game. I played through it on Xbox Game Pass when it was on there about 2 years ago. And then I picked up the 1+2 for Switch. So that way I could have both games physically. And played it with my daughter this time, actually. And having that 2-player option was a lot of fun.
Alrighty, and guess I'll lead it into myself here. This game came at a perfect time for me. I was working a job that I didn't typically enjoy at all, and I saw the trailer for this, and I was immediately drawn into it, not kind of knowing what I was getting into. I mean, I will get into the prior games later on, but I had a little bit of an affiliation with the River City genre, and so when this came out, I thought it was going to be your typical, TMNT punch, kick, whatnot, maybe a special, and to my delight. Not only was there a slew of moves to start off with, but you earn more through leveling up, and as you mentioned, also the dojo. And honestly, it was night and day how much I was gonna love this game, like to the point where I would stay up for multiple hours after I should have gone to bed for work the next day. And I was like, you know what? I just can't put this down. I need to see what happens next. And for myself, I was actually a Kyoko player. I loved her kind of bubbly airheadedness, and I thought that it was kind of fun in terms of that. Alrighty. I guess I'll start off with Stump this time. Do you have any connection with prior River City titles for expectations?
Oh, absolutely. So I played a lot of River City Ransom as a kid on my NES. So that was a game that I had a huge amount of connection to, but I hadn't really played too much else of the series because the series kind of spun out into like River City Soccer and a couple other things after that. So it didn't do too much in regards to the same beat 'em up style until years later. I did pick up what was it, River City Melee Battle Royale Special on the PS4. I imported that one from somewhere in Play Asia. I don't even know what region it was originally. But I played a lot of that, and of course, like I said, the blood of this game was definitely in Scott Pilgrim, and I played that both when it originally released in 2009 and when it re-released a couple years back as well.
Perfect. How about yourself, Church?
Yeah, similar to Stump. My history goes back starting with River City Ransom, though that was never a game I actually finished. I just like dabbled it. I rented it a few times as a kid. No excuse now why I haven't gone back to play it, considering I have it in my collection. That's how it is with collectors and whatnot. But also, yeah, it's Super Dodgeball. Also, I did play the River City Melee Battle, whatever that game was called. I picked it up through limited run. That was fun, but hadn't really played much else of the series. So really, this is, I would say, kind of like really my first real dive in. This is my second time playing it. First time, I was super excited. Just I enjoy a lot of what Wait Forward does, and just seeing the initial trailers of the game, pixel art, and that's an easy way to sell me on a game. I was absolutely loving the style and whatnot. Fortunately, the first time I played, I was able to play through the whole game with a friend pretty much over a weekend. Just binged the game, had a blast. This time I played by myself, which still had a lot of fun, but I definitely think this game is one best played with two people if you can. Just couch co-op's always a blast. It had to have been a great time playing with your daughter, I would assume.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, it's I had high
Yeah.
expectations, and for me personally, it far exceeded what I had hoped for.
Perfect. And no surprise, I first started off with River City Ransom. Oh, gosh, I was very young. I was at a cousin's house, I believe, and I remember even back then loving, like you said, the kind of like the chibi little style characters and being able to take a weapon and be able to just chuck it across the screen. I was like, yo, this is dope. Like, I'd never seen something quite that. I use, for the lack of a better term, elaborate for a game back then. But back then, games were fairly simple, and River City Ransom kind of pushed the bar a little bit in terms of what you expected. And like, oh, well, wow, I can do that, and I can do that, and I can interact with this piece of the background scenery. Thinking, oh, well, that's just a bench, or you can actually pick up the bench. You can pick up the trash can, that kind of thing. But yeah, like you guys said, most of the series really was sort of set, elsewhere out of the NTSC region. Unfortunately, I will someday get into River City Zero and some of the other ones that I know that have made their way over here now. It's a time thing, unfortunately, but someday there'll be a rainy weekend when I have nothing going on, and I'll try and binge through them. But for the lack of a better saying, yeah, my only real iteration was River City Ransom before this, but RCG did not disappoint by any means. Alrighty, and then
Limited Runs actually putting out, well, they're doing a physical version. I'm pretty sure it's already available. There is like a Kunio-kun collection now that
correct,
I think
yes.
has everything that's on most platforms too.
I think I have seen it once at a convention. It was relatively overpriced, the person that had it, but it had, like you said, in the neighborhood of like 10 or 15 games on it. It was like the whole slew of them. Someday.
Yeah, I was going to pre-order it, but I after my last experience with the Scott Pilgrim thing, I didn't want to wait another 15 months for the whole thing to come out. and still not only have half of what I pre-ordered.
Fair enough.
Uh,
Alrighty, and then I guess we'll go into the aspects of the game that you feel need tweaking or changing. I guess I will start since I haven't taken a turn first. I'm not gonna. I mean, it's hard to say that a game's flawless. I'm sure anyone, whether you love the game or not, can find faults or things that kind of irk you a bit. Um, I think the whole store thing was a little bit off, just because it was a little bit of a gamble on what things did. I kind of had to pull up a guide when I first played it. Well, what does this accessory do? What does this do? How much energy does this food sort of bring to you? But that's a minor nitpick. I know that the newest one, I believe it immediately puts it within the description of the item. But other than that, you know, actually, another thing that I know was fixed with the sequel that the this one did not have is I found that if I was trying to exit one screen to another, and if an enemy was coming to attack me, they could break that cycle, and I would have to finish that battle before jumping to the next screen, which is unfortunate. But and what I found with the new one, as soon as you sort of enter that area and you select that you want to move on, it sort of grays you out. From what I remember, had very little time with it, but I immediately noticed like, oh, when I'm trying to exit that screen and move on to the next one, I'm not immediately being pummeled. I guess we'll go to Church. Any criticisms or things that you think that could have been fixed?
Yeah, not much. The store thing is slightly annoying. With this being my second time, I kind of understood more of the advantage that buying the items for me was just because you get the bonus to your stats if you just eat the item, even if you're not like saving it for later. So pretty much every time I went to a store, I just buy everything just so I got the stat boosts. So it's kind of a trade-off. But I think the only thing I would have liked to see River City Girls have that would elevate it would just be like maybe an online co-op or something. So you could, a lot of these games are 2-player, and I think they're a lot more fun to be played that way because, I mean, that's how they made the game. So if there was a function where you could just play online with like random people or something, I could think that could be a lot of fun. I don't know exactly how that would work with this game since it has the whole leveling system and, store where you can upgrade your skills and whatnot. But other than that, I mean, I don't got much to complain about. My love for this game is immense. It's pretty much like was pushed to the front of the pack compared to all other beat 'em ups. When I played this, I was like, oh yeah, by far this is my favorite beat 'em up of all time. I just absolutely loved it.
Perfect. I guess what I could say with your whole online thing, yes, that would have been great. But I guess the only necessary evil with that not being a part of the game, at least in my opinion, is that when the servers eventually do go down, at least that's not a part of the game that doesn't function anymore.
That's a very great point.
That's the only thing that I can say is a minor bonus with that nitpick. But at the same time, I would have loved to have seen that too. So I'm definitely not saying that you're wrong with that opinion because it would have been great as well. But at least in the future that game 20 years from now it's going to function exactly the way that it does from 20 years ago to whenever, right? So, But yeah, no, that's great. And how about yourself, Stump?
There aren't a whole lot of things that I would change. I didn't really have the same store issue that you guys had because I played a few of these games in the past, and of course they all kind of had a similar sort of system. The bigger issue that I remember, like right in the beginning of the game, was the difficulty curve at the beginning. Was a lot steeper than I remembered it being. Because I played the game, like I said, years ago on Xbox Game Pass, and so I had breezed through that first portion, or grinded my way through it at least, and forgot about how difficult that first couple encounters are, especially when you have a child playing with you. So that I would change so that way it's not just such a steep ramp and then it plateaus in difficulty. Because it didn't feel too difficult once you got to the second area at all. Once you got about that far in, you kind of understood your move set, or you started to customize what kind of special moves you're using the most. and it made it much easier to be able to play because you had your playstyle kind of locked in. I was playing as Kyoko the whole time. My daughter played as Misako. That is something that I would change. I haven't played 2. It's on my cartridge. I'm going to get around to it, but I'm hoping that that's something that I see a difference in, because I would hate to go back into it and then feel like, oh, this is just the same enemies scaled. They're not scaled at all to your level at all. They're just difficult until you get to that level, and then they're a breeze right afterwards. That's something that I would change. Aside that, not much. It's pretty flawless otherwise.
All right, perfect. I guess what I will say, because I don't actually think I left it in or put it in the script specifically off the top of my head. You're talking about the difficulty being, you get stomped pretty fast when you first get into the iteration of the game, but the game does give you many options later on to. I'm literally going to use the word tank because that's one of the pins that you can get. You can become so overpowered that it basically breaks the game if you are going for 100%. And I'm sure both of you probably know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
By that, if people aren't too familiar, there is a hidden shop, and they have pins. Oh, I'm calling them pins. I saw both iterations from people online saying button, pin, whatever. Call it what you will. Very expensive. You have to grind like crazy for the money on them, but yeah, it literally changes the game from any, and I do mean any difficulty, to you literally just being able to walk through and basically be invincible. Um, it's still a fun part of the game because you can, you get to the point where, like, I'm so beastly overpowered, but at the same time, you're running through the rest of the game like, wow, there's like virtually no challenge now. Alrighty, scroll down a little bit here. Alrighty, so we did all that. So gameplay and features of quests, openly discuss any of the points below. As we touched base earlier, you can choose between Kyoko or Misako, who play similarly but have unique moves, whether it be your upgrades through leveling up or the dojo. I think we've both kind of covered that in a little bit of passing, probably not much to discuss past that. As the player, you progress through 6 areas, but is free to return to previous areas as well, which is key because there are things to pick up. That would be the cats and the Sabu statues. I don't know if either one of you want to maybe touch base on those so we can pad this out just a little bit because it is a short game. So either one of you that wants to pick up on that, we can sort of touch base.
Yeah, I didn't really bother with it this time just because I was playing with my child. So we were more focused on just getting through the game. It was my younger child, so she's 5. So for her, this was more so her just wanting to play and beat up everything on the screen. So we didn't worry about getting every single collectible, doing every single thing. It was more so just powering through. When I played it years ago on Xbox, though, yeah, I definitely went for as many things as I possibly could. And, searching around the statues, getting was probably my main one. I didn't bother too much with the cats as much, just because I didn't feel like searching for them after about getting half. I was like, I'm done with that. But the statues, like, I saw them pretty early on, and I'm like, oh, I can break this. Cool. I'm going to find all of them. And so if I was missing one, I would go back through and try to find it.
All right. Church?
Yeah, similarly, I think the first time I played through the game, I put like a little bit of effort in trying to find them. Basically just by going to every area, it made it a point to go down all the side paths or any of the areas that you didn't necessarily have to go to as part of the story, but I didn't really go out of my way to find them. So if I saw them, I went after them. Otherwise, I was just kind of like, whatever. I'm not necessarily like an achievement hunter or anything, so it wasn't a big deal. I didn't feel like I was really missing out on much if I didn't find everything.
All right. Myself, I did have to actually search up some of them. Some of them were pretty cryptic to find, but there's 25 cats and 25 Sabu statues. The cats, if you get all 25, unlocks unlimited SP for your special move. So you could just, literally spam that like crazy. And the Sabu statues, you get all 25 of those, and that is, I'm gonna call it like a half of a locket or a charm, and you need that if you want to actually fight the true end boss of the game. The end boss that you get to, and we'll get into near the end here with the tower, you get another charm from them, and that's how I was like, well, how do I only have half? And I found out afterwards, oh, you need all 25 of these statues destroyed. You get the other half when you put on both. Then you get to fight the actual main boss that you didn't know was going to be an encounter.
Did not know that.
Yeah,
Oh.
that was that one I did back on Xbox. I didn't bother with it this time, but yeah, it's a fun fight too.
Okay, well, let's not spoil that for Church yet. We will get into that at the end because, like I said, I was not expecting it until I found out. I was like, oh, I have to do this now because, well, like I said, we'll get into that. But it was a cool fight, that's for sure. Finding my where was I? So we did that. Oh, the chained off areas. So basically, if you're getting into, sometimes the screen will, for the lack of a better term, lock. You'll see a chain link fence sort of style go around the entire perimeter of the screen with a padlock, and you have to defeat. You have no choice but to defeat every enemy that comes on screen until that padlock is broken, and then you can freely move through the game again. In some cases, I mean, there was no warning by any means when it happened. If you're low on health, I mean, you're screwed because there was no way to run. But so sometimes it was a pain in the butt. But again, once you get to a point where you're not even overpowered, but just competent enough to roll through enemies without taking a lot of damage, it was no big deal. But it'll definitely take you for a loop when you are within your first, say, 7 to 10 levels for sure.
Really cool aesthetic choice too. For me, mostly I'm used to like, kind of your more less flashy beat 'em ups. Double Dragon, the Ninja Turtles games where the screen would you couldn't proceed until you got that like let's go arrow or something after you defeated the enemies. But I really liked all the style that they put into this, and yeah, the chain with the lock also kind of gave you an indicator on like how many enemies you needed, because each time you defeated an enemy, that lock would get like a little bit more damaged.
Yeah. No, there was an indication, like when that lock was basically nearly broken off, then you knew, okay, well, you're down to your last two. But it was cool aesthetic choice, like you said. There was an indication. It wasn't, you weren't going blind. Like you're sort of getting into panic mode. Oh, I have virtually no health left, but that lock's basically almost busted. Okay, well, I got a 50-50 chance of maybe getting it for a heal first before I die. And the enemies that you encounter, some of them might want to surrender. And you actually have a choice in whether you actually just take them out or recruit them. And those enemies can be summoned to assist you. And that is something that I had never encountered before either in a beat 'em up genre. I'm not saying that hasn't happened before. Personally, never seen it though. And in some cases, that would actually kind of save your butt as well. Again, stupidly low on health. You had some big beefy character that came on. Sometimes that would give you just enough of an edge to edge out the battle.
Yeah, absolutely. I found it to be super helpful, especially in the beginning, because of your limitations. When you're still trying to power yourself up and get ready for that difficulty plateau that I mentioned. That was super helpful in getting through that initial first area of like once you're out of the high school and you're like into that open area trying to get that burger for the guy. Like there's a couple of areas there where enemies just continually will keep spawning in from the exit area if you don't leave fast enough. And having somebody like that definitely helped you get through those portions, and I appreciated that. I thought it was a really cool mechanic.
Alrighty, and as we discussed earlier, it's River City rules. Items that you, or sorry, enemies that you do defeat, they drop money. You can spend them at the various shops that you come across for food, gear, fighting moves from the dojo. In case we weren't too specific on that earlier, that's definitely how you, a main way that you progress besides your actual XP. Optional side quests. Did you guys consider doing any? Was it like something you hunt down for, or?
Any opportunity I had to do the side quests, I was all over them. Just kind of adding. It wasn't like padding out the experience, but just extending the playtime. For me, I was a welcome thing, and just gives you more reason to hit some of those side areas too. And it almost rewards you at the same time too.
It does open up some more of the map as well. Sometimes it'll give you another way that you can go from one end to another, sort of like a back door. Like I know from my experience was the first one that I really liked going back to was inside the high school in the kitchen. I can't remember the exact parameters of it because it was years ago that I did that one. I'd already done the side quest, so I couldn't replay it with my save game that I already had. But it was started off where you have to like move a dumpster out of the way for the cook or whatnot, and it would basically give you another door to get through. And I was like, "Oh, this is a cool side quest. It actually opens up something more." And again, it doesn't expand the story, but it gives you a little bit more to do versus just the straight linear run. All right, and I guess we will talk about the absolute best part of the game, and I full down, hands down, this is what makes the game for me is the freaking soundtrack. Anyone that wants to lay into this, go.
Yeah, no, the soundtrack is incredible. The composers that they got, this turned me on to Megan McDuffie. As far as her disc choreography, I think the River City Girls songs that she did are my favorite. I mean, Way Forward generally has really good composers. I mean, most famous is Jake Kaufman. He didn't work on this. I actually forget who the main composer was for this that did just the songs, but then you had the vocal tracks, which were the Megan McDuffie songs. Really cool, just really great retro music. I kind of get that like semi synth wave stuff, but this Megan McDuffie was the highlight for me. Her songs are just there's awesome, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, no, this soundtrack is like most other Way Forward soundtracks, absolutely amazing. I don't know who they have behind the scenes, who they recruit for all their OSTs, but pretty much everything. Like I'm trying to think. First game I played from it wasn't Shantae, unfortunately. I wish it was because going back and playing that now is amazing. But I believe it was Mighty Switch Force was one of the first games I played from them, and they had such an amazing soundtrack for that, and it's just pretty much continued from there. I believe you said Megan McDuffie. I think she was actually the composer of the soundtrack as well, not just the vocalist. So it's amazing. It's got like this really, really cool electro pop sort of feel to it, which I wasn't expecting from this, considering the lineage of River City. But it definitely fits more so with the protagonist of this story versus something like if it was another, one with Kunio and Ricky, something a little bit more hard edge, a little more street gang rock would probably fit a little better. So I'm glad that it had a change in direction on this one.
I myself, I love. I mean, half of what makes a great game is the audio, and the soundtrack was a banger the whole way through for me. A lot of titles you can think of, like okay, well, this one stage it had kind of a boring atmosphere, and the track didn't help at all to improve it. I was a big fan of the soundtrack of this thing. I mean, when I ordered it and it showed up to my house and it came with an actual CD of the soundtrack, I'm like, not really been uh, familiar with it, I was like, that's kind of a cool gimme, but I didn't ask for it, and now it's like, oh, now I'm really glad that I have an audio CD. I mean, I could just go easily well and download it, of course, but I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing to have on my shelf as well for a game that I really do love. But like, I mean, the absolute best track for me was we'll get into that fight in a little bit, but uh, the battle with noise. I thought that was the best audio that the game had to offer.
Yeah, I was just
it was
going to mention
fantastic.
that too.
I love that battle, and the audio made it 10 times better.
Yeah, it's awesome integration that they made the music part of what was going on.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It reminds me a lot of now Hi-Fi Rush, which I was playing earlier this year. It has such a similar vibe to that, but like obviously that's the entire game is like that. And seeing that in here after having played Hi-Fi Rush earlier this year, I was like, oh man, I forgot this was in here. This is so great. Because I'm always down for a good rhythm game.
Alrighty. In the pause menu, this is our main way to navigate ourselves through the map, our move list, our gear loadouts, etc. I personally thought that it was great. I mean, the way that they integrated it, it wasn't just a pause menu. It was a little cutesy cell phone, like a smartphone. And it totally suited, the high school girl vibe with the little bear case or whatnot that was on. I believe it was a little teddy bear. But it was very useful. It wasn't cluttered with a whole lot of crap. Sometimes you get these menus that are utterly useless because they give you no information at all, and then you get others that have so much info that it's a bother to even pull it out to even navigate what you want to do. This was honestly kind of a perfect mix of not too much, but offering just enough.
For attention to detail, that really, I think, helped elevate the game. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. It had what you needed: the map, the move lists. Yeah, you can switch your gear and whatnot. But yeah, just further enhancing the presentation is fantastic.
It was super helpful too. You could do the fast travel with the bus, and you could sort of figure out exactly where you wanted to go because of that map. You didn't have to do a lot of jostling around. Well, where am I supposed to go? Oh, this is where I want to be, and that was great too because you didn't have to run through, several different parts of the game to get backtrack to one specific area. So I thought that was a nice quality of life touch as well. Alrighty. And another thing that I love, don't get me wrong, soundtrack is tops, but the weapons. There are so many freaking weapons. I'm going to say it right now. The absolute top weapon for me, because I didn't even know it was a weapon. I was too close to it in the environment, and I ended up picking it up. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a weapon. I wonder how boss this is going to be. And it stomped. And that was the lightsaber in the arcade.
Cool.
Yeah.
It was fun to use, but for me, it was semi frustrating because you just hit them and they go flying, so it made it kind of hard to take out the enemies at times. My go tos every chance I could were the chain, the yo-yo, and the star wand, and especially once I got the I forget what item it was that I could equip that would make it so they were unbreakable. Then I carry them for many screens until I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go back to beating things up because I feel like I'm limiting myself too much. But so many things. I mean, park benches and bikes and boxes. It's wild.
The attention to detail with some of them was fantastic. Like the bicycle, when you swing that and nail someone with it, you would hear the little bell on the handlebars ding with it. So there's a little bit of things like that in the wrench. I mean, you expect with the wrench, you're going to hear a big thud when you swamp someone with it. But the bicycle, I kind of giggled like wham, and then you get the little bell. Ding. But there's so many things you could pick up. Like that, things that you didn't even imagine were even interactable with in the environment, and like, holy crap, I can grab that. Even like a fish from the fish market, you can use that. I thought it was a pretty cool way to integrate as much as they could, and also surprise the player as to, hey, what can I use as a weapon? And it did not disappoint. There was more weapons than I could probably count. I nearly went on a hunt online to go through the list of all of them, and once I saw it, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not spending that level of time on this. For us to discuss that could have been a separate podcast on its own.
Definitely. No, it's very similar to how Scott Pilgrim worked, where legitimately anything that looks like you can pick up, you can. Whether it be a park bench, a trash can, a baseball bat, a baseball, a beach ball, doesn't matter. Everything's a weapon. Just use it. So I didn't really have any favorites per chance, because like everything was sort of situational. Like the lightsaber's fun, but then if you knock somebody too far, it just becomes kind of a hassle to take them out. I just preferred just to grab whatever I could, and then if I saw something else cool that I wanted to grab, I just threw it at the enemy and just grabbed something else. I was much more utilitarian in that regard.
And also, as you mentioned, Church, there are those items, they do break after whatever finite amount of hits that they are sort of programmed for in the game. But you can get, I believe it was books actually, and those books would help you keep an item longer before it would disintegrate on you. But that's a great way to hold. If you found a certain genre of items that you liked, whether it be the tools or the sporting gear, the toys, that kind of thing, you could make them a little bit more robust before you got yourself more leveled up as well, and that could help you progress a little bit through more without getting completely obliterated by the foes. Alrighty, and then I guess we'll get into the actual rundown of the game. We start in River City High School. And I personally, this was a great entrance. You're in detention. You make your way through a high school. It is an absolute dump. It's honestly in kind of disrepair. No big surprise. Teenagers are filthy at times. But it was great. There's even a little bit of like a funny euphemism where they're talking. It's sort of like sex ed based in one of the classrooms that you're going through on like the projector screen. And I got a giggle out of that. Go all the way through the high school. You meet up with two girls that are, let's go with the non-swear version. Not very nice. I did not like them. And that would be Hasabe and Miyami. You interact with them a handful of times throughout the game, but yeah, they are easily hateable. Let's just put it that way. And then we go to the first boss, which is Mizuzu. And if anyone wants to elaborate on anything that I just mentioned, you are feel free to.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, Mizuzu was a fun first fight. They had a lot of really creative dialogue there with her being in high school for 7 years. So that makes her obviously the smartest person there.
Of course it does.
And then her picking on the girls for being not thick. That was fun. I thought it was a choice. So then that fight was a lot of fun, of course. It kind of teaches you, or taught my daughter how to deal with pattern mechanics. Because I'm like, you have to wait for this. You have to wait for this. And then you can hit. You can't hit too much because then you're just going to get hurt and get knocked out. And I don't have time to save you. So it was a fun little fight. And I thought that them starting in the high school was a perfect place to be.
Good introduction to like what to expect. It's a little bit more linear compared to some of the other areas. And like just again, the attention to detail, like they could have just made everything just plain and hallways and classrooms, but there's like trash and signs and just like junk all over the place. Like they really went to town with just the aesthetics. There's so much to look at. One thing that I think is entertaining is there's always other characters in the backgrounds, other students or people out in the world, and if you like walk by them and you throw punches and stuff, they'll like duck and cower. And the things that they could have excluded, to like cut down on development time, but they decided not to. It's just so many things elevate this game, and I think the high school is a perfect starting point. You know, playing schoolgirls, hey, makes sense.
Like, I guess
For
what I would
education.
what I was sort of what you're saying with the backgrounds, it's not like that Looney Tunes pattern where they're running in a hallway and you got that same doorway, 17 times. Every hallway, every area felt different, even if it was just a trash can knocked over and all the litter everywhere. It was you knew you're in a different level, or sorry, a different staircase had been traveled up or down, and it didn't feel like it was just the same screen over, the same screen over, the same screen over. There was a variety. As much as it sounds kind of crazy for high school, they're normally pretty bland, but you knew you'd hit a different floor every time that you travel through the staircase. Alrighty, let's go with Crosstown. Does anyone want to lead us into what Crosstown contained?
Sound
Well,
was mostly just like neighborhood and led us up to the mall. A little less in disarray compared to the school. And kind of, I feel like this is where I spent most of my time in the game, just because I felt like for some reason I like you got the dojo there and tons of shops. So as I was returning to the mall to get upgrades as I got more money, and not I would say it's not interesting, but a little less interesting compared to like how much design was in the school and some of the other areas with just the things that are everywhere.
It was, I would say, it was more bland than probably anywhere else in the game, to be honest with you. But it was heavily traveled. Like I said, for the mall itself, you could get a lot of your gear through that, and then it's not like you had to hunt. Oh, which shop had this? Which shop had that? The mall had virtually every shop, so you could get your loadout almost certainly there, unless it was a specialized item sold at a specific shop somewhere else in the game. Most of what you needed could be found there, as much as it was kind of just your generic little mall that you get in most other games. I would say it was probably the least interesting part of the entire adventure, but it was a necessary addition to have because high school kids are mall rats. It happens, and I thought that you kind of had to have a mall for the theme. But yeah, no, it was definitely kind of passable if you didn't really want to be there. And we should say that we had our second boss fight, and that was outside of the mall in a construction zone, which was Yamada. And Yamada was, I got stomped quite a few times on this one when I was low level. I actually found it quite difficult.
Yeah, this was the last boss fight that I found to be difficult, because after that you have plenty of options to upgrade yourself and get those level ups. There aren't as many in Crosstown has them, but you're not in the mall until you meet Yamada, because it's at the construction site there. You don't have access to everything. So for me, it was more so I didn't have the money to get every upgrade I wanted at that point in the game. And Yamada definitely was hurting bad. It took a few tries to get through it. But it was the last time that was really an issue for me in this game. Everything else after that, I was able to round one pretty much most of the rest of the bosses, except for the secret boss, which James will talk about later. Aside that, I mean, Crosstown is a pretty notable location from the series. Like, it was probably 90% of what you played in River City Ransom was Crosstown. So for me, it was like more of a refresher. And this is where they had some of the YouTubers that they had in there. So like Jacksepticeye was one of the characters, and I know Aaron Hansen from Game Grumps was one of the characters as well. So they had their little cameos here. But aside that, it's pretty basic, but it was never meant to be anything more than that. So I'm fine with that.
Alrighty. And then we'll move into Uptown. And this is where it's a little bit more, I don't want to say ritzy, but there's a lot more variety. You have like your arcade and the pawn shop. Pawn shop is an absolute must. You have to visit that before you can continue to reach your third boss. But it was sort of like a dark nighttime alleyway, but a fun one. There is a lot to explore. Some of the shops, and yeah, I personally thought it was one of my more favorite areas besides the high school, actually.
Yeah, no, I agree. Also having the quest point being the pawn shop there was a lot of fun as well. Just because I kind of didn't know that was going to be where the boss was the first time I played it, and then you just kind of stumble into the fight for the most part, if you aren't paying attention, at least. And I was like, oh, cool, new shop. Okay, I guess I'm fighting now. So that was a lot of fun. I didn't expect it, and I had a lot of fun in Uptown. Probably the aside Ocean Heights is probably my favorite area.
And this one actually contained our third boss, which was Hibari. And I would argue not difficult, but frustrating, as she has like for lack of a better explanation, like a sword or like a dagger that gets tossed towards you, and you have to make sure that bounces off the wall and angles back and hits her. It took me forever to try and get down the neck of that, because you have to be almost precise to get those daggers to bounce off where you want them to go and then actually still hit the character.
It's probably like 5 times longer for me than it should have been, because for some reason I just could not get that dagger to line up. But fun otherwise.
It was fun, but I found it's not one where you can just go in and just start hammering down and beating on, because she floats in the top of the screen and literally out of reach. You can't actually hit. So you kind of have to play by that boss's rules. There's no way to skirt around it. It gave a bit of variety to the game, something different that you hadn't seen. I would argue that it's not my favorite way to do a boss battle, because I kind of like going in guns blazing, if you will. But it definitely gave at least a little bit more variety instead of just the same thing every time. And I think the game did a good job of giving you a little bit of something different for every battle. And this was definitely probably the most out there that you're going to get for a beat 'em up in terms of strategy to try and defeat the boss. Some people take it, leave it. I personally, fun the first time. I didn't need to go through Hibari again, but I appreciate the effort for something different.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of fun with it. It being able to, I think it's because she's like a seamstress. It's like a sewing needle that she throws at you instead of a
That's
dagger.
what. I would thank you. My brain's fizzled this morning.
For me, once I figured out I just needed to be like on the opposite side of her, or like if she was in the middle, I just avoided it. I didn't really care if it rebounded into her. I just dealt with it when she was on either side of the playing field, because then it would for sure fling back into her if you jumped over it at the right time. It wasn't too hard to figure out her pattern, and it was a lot of fun. It did take longer than I wanted, because you couldn't just wail on the boss like you can with other bosses in this game. So the fight took more time, but good soundtrack, so I'm not going to complain about more time in this when it wasn't difficult. It was just tedious.
Tedious. That's the perfect word. That's exactly how I would describe it. And then we move on into Downtown. And from here, it's actually pretty easy to start getting back and forth through the different screens that you were kind of one way initially. It opens up a lot of the map to connect to one another for wanting to backtrack if you didn't want to use the fast travel. So that was kind of nice. And Downtown is, I would say that it's almost kind of like Crosstown, not super exciting, but it's a different area of the game. You get to see a little bit more. Any one of you guys want to touch base on it if you want, but to be honest with you, besides the fourth boss, there wasn't an awful lot that I feel was noteworthy in downtown.
It honestly reminded me a lot of Double Dragon. This level, just
That
in
would make
terms of
sense with the
design,
fourth boss. Yes, very much so.
it does make a lot of sense with the fourth boss. But like, it seemed like they were leading up to that by creating this environment that seemed very familiar to beat 'em up fans, and I felt like it was just paying tribute more so than anything. And I'm a sucker for nostalgia, so for me, it didn't really it didn't hurt it at all. I was having a lot of fun downtown.
For sure. And who wants to lead into the fourth boss? Because I had no idea it was coming, and when it happened, I lost my mind. I was like, yes.
Yeah, so the boss being Adobo, which is just straight up Double Dragon. Yeah, you can't even do a full combo on him. He'll just headbutt you. His fight reminded me a lot more of the Misuzu fight earlier in the game, but you've learned more about patterns. And so not to go full on out onto a boss. You have to wait a little bit at the end there and kind of restrain yourself. That was a lot of fun. So I had a lot of fun with him. The way he does like his fist pound on the floor definitely comes in handy later with the original final boss with Sabuko. So it was each one of these fights is like teaching you something for the final fights, and I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. Also, don't forget about the secret shop in the tunnel.
Yes, there is the secret shop. That is where I mentioned earlier your tank and bunny pins.
Mhm.
That would be where your secret shop in between the two areas when you're heading into downtown.
Yeah, and this secret shop is something that is persistent throughout the series. And it's something that they did put in Scott Pilgrim as well. So when you're going in through the tunnel in the first area to go to the first boss in that game, there's a star you can go into it, and that's where the secret shop is in Scott Pilgrim as well. So it's a running gag, and I love it.
That's on my backlog. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
It's fun that there's so many throwbacks to, I don't know the Kunio-kun series per se, but seeing a Bobo from Double Dragon was cool. He had one of my favorite interactions in the game, and I didn't write down the specific quote, but he was just running his mouth, and the girls basically asked him like, why are you so mean? And he's like, oh, I didn't get enough hugs as a kid. It's just it's silly. I don't know. I just really enjoyed that.
Truly silly, but it was probably one of my favorite areas to end off with the Aboba fight was fantastic. But I will move into my personal favorite of the game, which was Ocean Heights. And this is sort of like a seaside town, beach town, that kind of thing, where you need to talk to the locals to find out specifics for, I guess it was like the security guard at the door for your VIP tickets. And that would be your interaction with, or so not interaction, but your fight with the boss of Noise. And hands down, best fight of the game. Secret battle at the end is definitely almost near the top, but it's definitely number 2. My battle with Noise, I thought it was so much fun, and I had to do it again. But yeah, it's just a really fun seaside town. Again, there's how did I mention where you can get fish? There's a lot of fish in the area. You can use them to battle your foes. Yeah, it's pretty cool, and there's a lot more dialogue in this area as well because of the character interactions for getting the information to get your VIP tickets.
Yeah, no, I love the beach scene. Like I'd already mentioned, like using the beach balls earlier to fight with people, and I was having a blast. This is my favorite area of the game for sure. It just has so much more character, and it's not something that we've really seen before. Like I know that there were a couple of levels in some of the River City like sports games that were located on the beach, but they didn't really have the same amount of depth or character that this does. So I was having a lot of fun. And the Noise fight, of course, having its Guitar Hero influences and everything like that was a lot of fun as well. It's extremely memorable. The soundtrack here is absolutely unforgettable as well. Like this is, if you're going to listen to one section of this game, I would say this is the one to go with.
I agree. I don't have much to add that you guys didn't already say, but yeah, the noise boss fight was a lot of fun. I like just the different segments of the song and how things ramp up, and the threats that she just puts into lyrics and whatnot. So, yeah, it's awesome.
Alrighty. I guess what we'll do for this last section then, since you yourself, Church, am not overly familiar with the secret final boss battle, you can take us into Sanwa Kai Tower, and then myself and Stump can do the final boss that is the quote-unquote secret hidden boss in the same area.
Get to the end, going after Sabuko, and I kind of, this might have been one of my least favorite areas. Not that it was bad or anything, but nothing too wild going on that I can remember, anyways. Can't remember. There was like one section where they had like the electric floor or whatnot, but it's basically just making your way to the top.
I would say that it was more of a grind than anything. My first time going through, not having been top level, not having gotten any of the special pins to really help myself out, I took a lot of L's getting up to the top my first time round. Any enemy that you run into is very powerful. They can definitely stomp out a ton of your energy fast. And there's a lot to do in terms of being able to find all the explosives. And you don't know that you need the explosives until you reach the top, and then you have to go hunt the damn things, go all the way back down, and then return back up. And you can take a lot of damage if you're not overpowered by any means.
Yeah, no. When I went into the tower, I think I was like level 20, so it wasn't too much of an issue for me. I didn't feel that overpoweredness because I think I just came in at the appropriate level to be able to take it on with the right pattern recognition. It reminds me a lot of like pretty much most beat 'em ups from the 16-bit era and before have a tower section, whether it was Battletoads or even the old TMNT games, even the ones on the Game Boy had tower sections. So it being inevitable in this game, if it's playing so much homage to all this stuff, like makes sense. But yeah, I didn't hate it that much. It just felt nostalgic, like everything else.
Yeah, hate is the wrong word, but for me, but it was definitely a grind. I found that until I got redid the game again, like you can keep your same save file so you don't lose any of your progress and sort of grind on top. Until I did that, I found it very difficult to get to the top, at least for myself. And I was a big fan of the game, and I was just like, "Oh my god, how do I reach the top without being, at 0 health?" It took a while for myself, but I did enjoy it. And the way that you get into the final boss is, as I prior mentioned, getting all the explosives that you're asked to get from the gentleman at the door to basically blow it open for you. And that final boss is Sabuko.
Yeah, and Sabuko is a lot of fun. Like, I love the mechanic of the sort of, what is it, the pictures that they have on the wall, or the sort of engravings that they have, giving you a key to what their power set is at any given point in the fight, whether it was like the rabbit, the dragon, or the koi fish. So that way you can see what kind of like power set and pattern you have to go for during that section of the fight. So if you're not successful your first time, you can be like, okay, this is coming up. I know what to do next. I felt it was a very well-informed boss fight. It wasn't terribly difficult until they got their secret, 4th bar of health. And then you're just dealing with the dragon moveset with all the fire. And you're like, oh, well, I haven't seen these set. And you just kind of have to play it by ear at that point. But again, like by the time I was at the fight with Sabuko, I was already level 22 from everything I'd done in the tower. So even with me taking quite a bit of damage, I still finished that fight with about half my health, so it wasn't too bad.
I think I actually went into that battle with a ton of the med kits, and that's how I survived going through the tower. I bought a ton of them, but they were very helpful. All right, and I guess we'll go into the actual final bosses. And yes, I said bosses plural, as in two. And that would be the very two unlikable young ladies that I mentioned earlier, Hasabe and Mami. They are fantastic fun, and the way that you actually interact with them is you complete the game with your battle with Sabuko, and once you go through the whole credit scene and whatnot, you're offered half of this charm. And you're like, okay, well, great. What do I do with this? Well, that's virtually worthless. It does nothing. Unless you get all 25 of the Sabu statues, which we had touched base earlier on. You destroy all of those, and you get the other half of that charm. When you get up to the doorway in Sanwakai Tower, have it blown up before walking through, put on both of those charms. Go through the door, and that's how you get to fight Hasabe and Mami. As soon as that fight starts, you can take those charms off and put on your loadout that you would typically like. You're not crippled by any means in terms of your loadout. They don't have to stay on to continue the fight. But that is the only way that you're going to interact with these two characters.
Yep. The cats thing, not at all required. The cats, if I remember, only appear in New Game Plus.
The cats is for the infinite SP, but it's just the Sabu statues.
Yeah, but getting to the Sabi and Mami fight, there's so much great dialogue here, because Hasabi and Mami are characters from the series in the past, and so like I love it. What was the line? Like, you only dated Kunio for one 16-bit game, I think is what they said. Like, they're referencing the fact that there's like this extremely complicated and doesn't make any sense multiverse of Kunio series games that all just kind of get shoved in and combined here. And it kind of makes sense with the comic book ending as well once you finish the fight, where the boys are just like, oh, it's those crazy girls again. And they just are wondering where Hasabi and Mami are. Like, that all makes sense because they were never dating them, at least in this portion of the universe or the multiverse for Kunio games. So it's a lot of fun.
Oh, for sure. I was honestly, they felt like the characters that were just there to sort of pad out the game. Like, you run into them in certain, different areas of the game. It's like, okay, they're just there to carry on the dialogue. I had no idea that they were going to be an actual interactable fight at any point. So when that happened, I was overjoyed. I thought that, I kind of hate these two because they're so darn unlikable. And then be able to use them, fight against them in a battle as a secret battle was just the icing on the cake for me.
Oh, absolutely. And that battle was a lot of fun because they have a very similar moveset to you. So like it didn't seem like it was too terribly like out of left field that, you're fighting schoolgirls like yourself who also kind of function in the same way you do. So like I took down I think it was Mami first, and then she had her like spirit coming out just like you would if you were playing a 2-player game. The spirit of your fallen comrade will come out and you have to go and try to like grab and press a bunch of buttons to save them. That happens with Mami as well. But her spirit will actually get in the way and start fighting you in the middle of that fight as well. I was having so much fun with that fight. Like it took me by surprise as well. I knew that they were characters from the series, but I didn't know that they were going to be anything other than like a little cameo footnote that just kept getting in your way until they did. And then I just absolutely, I love the ending. That comic book ending just was the icing on the cake for me.
Those two had it coming, I can tell you that. I did not like I liked them as characters in the game, but they were so unlikable, but that's the way that they were designed. They're not there for you to be a fan of. They're like, okay, you know what? I don't like you. And they certainly gave off the perfect vibe of being those two that you shouldn't kind of fall in love with. They were definitely the protagonists that you were like, I can see why you're an adversary in this high school.
Yeah,
All
actually,
right.
now that you guys had talked about it, I think the first time I played through the game, I actually did do that because once you mentioned the spirit part, It's like, oh, okay, yeah. So I did see that. Totally forgot about it the second time, but yeah, is what it is.
For sure. So I guess we can start wrapping it up. It's been actually we did not too bad. I thought this would be a little bit shorter for a short game, but if there's anything else that you think that either you two think we missed, we can mention it now. If not, then we can get into the community impressions and then literally do the wrap up.
One other complaint that I kind of forgot about until I was looking at my notes, and it is what it is. I think it'd make the game too easy, but one thing that I kind of felt was kind of cheap was like any of the enemies, like standard enemies, not the bosses, like you could wail on them and it seemed like they could combo break you and then just mess you up. But you hadn't, once they started their attack chain on you, there's no way of interrupting that. And I wish there was like a combo breaker or something, or even like some criteria. Maybe you had to have like a certain amount of stamina to combo break or something. But every once in a while, I just felt the game was like, it's like, come on, you're being cheap.
Actually, I guess a way that they could have implemented that would be, let's say if you wanted to combo break, there's got to be a way that it punishes you for doing that, and that would be maybe depleting your SP meter, no matter how full or empty that it was. Or let's say the SP meter had to be minimum half full, and it would be depleted. And if you didn't have half, then guess what? They're just going to wail on you. Some way to sort of make it a little bit fair both ways, but I can see that being a bit of a gripe as well, but a very fair one.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, if you were able to use your SP move to just break out, like use that as the combo breaker, but it knocks them away rather than keeping them in that damage loop, so they don't take the full brunt of your SP attack. That would be an equal balance because you're not going to be able to do that over and over and over again. So if you just are doing bad at the game and are getting constantly stuck in these juggles, then you're not going to have that ability to go ahead and get through that. I think that would have helped a lot in the earlier stages. Like I had mentioned, that difficulty ramp up in the beginning of the game. It's a lot because you get stuck in those combat loops where you're stuck in these combos from, like, it's showing on the screen back here, like the security guards, like when you're first getting into Crosstown, and then when you're getting closer to the mall, they can combo loop you in ways that are just not fun because they're either hitting you with a stick or they're throwing the gas at you, and then you're just getting looped over and over and over again. Having something to break out of that in the beginning would have made me and my daughter not lose so much money and have to keep grinding these enemies over and over again to be able to get into the dojo, because it just felt like a continual loop of sadness for a little while there. Hopefully it's something that's fixed in the second game. I don't know. I haven't played it. I doubt it is fixed because they're just going for a very classic vibe. So I'm assuming it's going to be just as frustrating, but not frustrating once you get over that enemy plateau. One thing that I would change, like I'd mentioned it a couple times, is somehow scaling the power of your enemies to your level set, so that way you can advance and can feel that. Because once you get to Ocean Heights, most enemies are fodder and they're not very difficult. But in the beginning, it's any enemy can really wail on you if you don't do something correctly. Having that scale to you would have been a lot more fun, because then I feel like every screen would have been a challenge, and it never was after Crosstown.
And the River City's Girls 2, they actually, I think they must have taken that into consideration because the enemies do scale with your level. But the trade-off then is like when you go back to some of like the beginning areas, you're like, oh, I should be able to, take out these guys no problem, but they scale them. So like it's like it's that constant challenge, which it's not a bad thing. But sometimes like you want to be able to, feel a little bit overpowered. But
yeah, but the pins, I assume, can do that. If you want to feel overpowered,
yeah.
the pins exist.
Absolutely. And yeah, I definitely recommend River City Girls 2 to anybody who enjoys the first one, or even if you haven't played the first one. The story continues. and they just kind of run. It's just more of everything, bigger areas, more side areas. I really like this one kind of has the origins of Kyoko and Misako, and the second one just kind of runs with it. Like it really, River City Girls 2 really turns up the idiot factor for them, and I absolutely love it. That's like my favorite part of River City Girls 2 is that they're both just like so dumb and so violent. Like they want to just solve everything by punching, but like they just don't. They're just like so clueless, and I think it's just absolutely hilarious.
Perfect. All right. I guess we'll do the community impressions. There's a handful. So what I'll do is I'll let Church do the first two since you are the second one on the screen.
Okay, yeah. So Captain Algebra at Captain_Algebra says good, not great. Just too bad compared. And then on the flip side, mine was genre must play. I wish I could have put a genre must play but it's only three reviews because I think like I said, this is set the new standard for me when it came to beat 'em ups. Like I think it did everything right. The one thing I always had issues, especially going back to and playing a lot of the beat 'em ups that I hadn't played in the past, is that there's so many that like there's just punch and kick, and that's it. That's all there is to it. And it gets, if you play a bunch of them in a row, like say with like the Capcom beat 'em up collection, you run through all those games and most of them are just punch. That's all you do. So yeah, I much like my tweet, I think this is a must play if you enjoy the genre. And if you don't enjoy the genre, try this game. Maybe that will change your mind.
Beautiful. Stump, would you like to do the next two on the screen? And if you wish,
Absolutely.
you can maybe give one yourself if you like.
Yeah. So our good boy in the group, Curtis, went ahead and said totally rocking soundtrack. Hard to disagree there. We already talked about that. This is one of the highlights of the game. JJ's voice said beats Double Dragon. Yeah. No, it's definitely a bit more complex than Double Dragon. I liked it a bit better than what Double Dragon Neon and a couple of other games that they've had in the last couple of years. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. 3-word for mine, because I haven't been on Twitter very much lately. So let's see.
If you need a moment to think, I can do the last two, and then you can jump on with yours after.
Colorful couch co-op.
Beautiful. Love it. Alrighty. And then we have J Clip Show. Simple, but enlightening. It is cool. I'm not going to disagree with that. And my 3 words would be soundtrack on repeat. Alrighty.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I'll do is I'm going to close this out. You two can stay on just in case there's anything else you wish to. Well, I'm going to actually ask you to give your socials at the end anyways. But if you'll give me a moment for a little bit of housekeeping at the end here. To those of you interested in supporting the club beyond a review on the podcast app of your choice, I'd like to mention that the club is entirely funded by pledges made from members of our community. We are extremely grateful to those supporters. And if you're interested in becoming one of them, please look into how you can do that at patreon.com/Cartridge Club. And I would like to give an extra special thanks to the two of you for giving up an hour and 15 minutes of your day today with me this morning to discuss this game. Hopefully it was because of your love for the game. And yeah, I really much appreciate a little bit of insight. And, I love or hate, and good or bad, people that have criticism, I love to hear both sides. And that way, it gives me a better mindset for what I might be able to criticize and or like in the future. So the panel today was comprised of myself, known as RetroPixel. You can find myself on Twitter sometimes, YouTube all the time, but very rarely do I upload lately due to a very horrendous work schedule. but I do try and put something up there at least once every couple of months, hopefully in the future a little bit more frequent. Then we also have Church. You can give any of your details that you wish to share with the public.
Sure, yeah. So I am on YouTube as the Game Grinder. Similar situation to James. I'm not uploading too much these days. Hey, if you enjoy an unboxing video for a collector's edition, I got you covered, because that's about all I can muster for effort these days, it seems like. But you know, I have a bunch of like evergreen content and whatnot. But otherwise, you can find me on all the social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the Game Grinder.
Beautiful. And we will move on down to our other lovely individual that spent time with us today, and that is Stumptownretro. Where can we find you if we want to in the future?
If you want to find me, I'll be on either Discord or Twitter at Stumptownretro. I'm not too much on Twitter these days, but if you message me, I'll eventually see it.
Beautiful. You know, that's everyone's busy. Great. So from there, we absolutely look forward to hearing from any of you that are listening next month. CC Unite.
Some girls are sweeties who will fill your life with joy. Some girls will break your heart, leave you crying on the street destroyed. But I don't like those girls. Don't need them in my world. I need a special girl you don't find every day. I don't need an overachiever. Right now, bad girls are just bad news. What I'm looking for is a special class of girl who can kick my ass. I need myself a River City girl. Last night I took my boo on a nice romantic date, and I went to pay the check, and she cracked my skull with a pasta plate. Said I don't mean no harm, and then she broke my arm. And that's the kind of charm that I appreciate. I've always got a concussion, not for a day. My spine's been fractured 6 times. The fastest way to this boy's heart is to take me down with martial arts. I can't quit these River City girls. Will I survive these River City girls? I might just die from